Hi, this is Scott Bogren, and it is Monday, February 6th, here in the nation's capital. And I am here today to talk a bit about what was a very tumultuous week for transportation and for transit in general in the Congress last week. Last week we last discussed the emergence of language in both the Senate and the House, which kind of gave us an inkling of what they intended to do with public transportation and with surface transportation in general throughout a reauthorization. Well, on Thursday, February 2nd, both the House and Senate marked up their bills. And it really was what we're calling this a tale of two transportation bills, because the House bill emerged from a very contentious process. To give you an idea, the markup of the House bill began 9 a.m. on Thursday, February 2nd, and 110 amendments later, the language was approved out of committee along a largely party line vote at 2 a.m. Friday morning. The bill that was passed out of committee included much of the language that we discussed in our last update, the combining of JARC New Freedom and Section 5310, a significant commitment to rural transportation, a move away from safety regulations for community transit type operators. Generally speaking, what we found were some favorable policies within the bill, and a continuation of the structure that all of us have come to know and rely on for public transportation. There was, however, a twist, a significant twist. When you looked at the bill, wherever it authorized funding for transit programs, also for CMAQ, it created something called the Alternative Transportation Fund, whereas in the past we'd always seen those things funded out of the mass transit account of the Highway Trust Fund. Highway programs in the bill that the House was marking up and successfully passed out of committee will continue to be funded out of the Highway Trust Fund. And it wasn't until all the pieces and the lines were kind of connected that you came to understood that in November, 3 separate energy bills had been proposed by the House Energy Committee that were passed out of that committee on Wednesday, February 1st, and those were designed to increase revenues out of oil exploration and leasing. Those were passed and were now moved into the Highway Trust Fund. The Alternative Transportation Fund would now not be funded at all out of the trust fund, and we got word of this on that same day, Thursday, February 2nd. They would be funded out of what was to be a $40 billion one-time appropriation of what looked to be general funds, funds which are extremely difficult to get in the current economic environment, particularly as we just begin to enter some of the debate about debt reduction and sequestration and some of those processes from last summer that have, as this Congress has continued to kind of put these things off. Well, this is a time where they're going to deal with that, and suddenly transit is funded out of a large general fund appropriation and not out of the dedicated trust fund. CTAA, as we've said, and we have some letters on our website that we'll share with you, has always looked for diversifying investment into the trust fund. We have never wanted to carve transit out of its dedicated revenues, but have thought adding to the trust fund while keeping the traditional 30-year highway transit split was a good idea, and we continue to think that was a good idea. We do not at all agree with the policy that the House has taken, and certainly the next day, after the House has this this marathon markup of its bill in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and passes out of committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, who's coming up with, as we've been talking about all throughout this process, the revenues, the pay-fors, where's the money coming from? Well, here they designate where the money's coming from, and in that bill that they successfully passed Friday morning, in that bill, they move public transit funds, this alternative transportation fund, they move that out of dedicated highway trust fund and that $40 billion one-time appropriations, it comes into play. And it's a tale of two transportation bills because on the other side of the hill, the Senate has a bill that also was marked up on Thursday, February 2nd. It was about a 2-hour markup. They had one amendment, and it passed in a bipartisan fashion. The Senate also has to come up with its pay-fors, and we have learned that that will happen likely tomorrow in the Senate Finance Committee. Now, they don't need to come up with the same amount of money. Theirs is a 2-year bill. The House's is a 5-year bill. They're coming up with somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 billion, and we'll share that information with you as well. So you're likely wondering, within all of this, well, what do I do? And we want to help you do that. And there's several ways in which we're going to help you do that. First and foremost, if you want the latest news on how these things are moving, please follow our Twitter account or go to our homepage, which has a scroll of the Twitter account. So even if you don't use Twitter, all that information is right there on the homepage. Our Twitter handle is CTMag1, CTMag1, and you get the latest information. And we had that updated late into the evening Thursday night as the markup was going on, and covered the House Ways and Means markup as well. And we share documents there. As well, you'll now see a Reauthorization Central, a link on our homepage. You can click on that, and that's going to take you to a place where we have our letters, where we have copies of the bill. We'll have this video. And we're also intending to take the Senate and the House version of these two bills and peel out, for instance, what does each bill say about Section 5311, Rural Public Transportation Funding. We're going to try to simplify this for you and not have you have to scroll through 800 pages of legislative language. Our analysis and the House and Senate versions of how they're going to deal with these things will all come to you as one. And we'll have it under subject header, so you just click on that subject and you'll be able to see that information. Many of us are wondering right now, where are we headed? And I think that's a very good question to ask. We do know that the House has floor time for a full floor vote of what happened last week, which would mean the energy titles, the House Ways and Means, and of course the Transportation and Infrastructure bill. So those three are going to kind of be wrapped up in some package and will be before the House next week, sometime the week of February 13th. And I think it's critical to know that right now the Democrats seem very opposed to anything that's in this bill, and some conservative groups are opposed. So if this bill comes to the floor of the House, I think you can be assured that they must know they have the votes. It's going to be a balancing act and a real political game now to find out how that plays out. I haven't heard yet about Senate floor time for its bill, but that as soon as we get information on that, we'll certainly share it with you. So what we're looking at is these two bills have moved out of committee. They need to go to the floor, and then there's this conference that's going to happen to try to reconcile these, a 2-year bill, a 5-year bill, two bills that pay for themselves in extremely different ways. The House bill is very political in nature on how it would be paid for. Many of us still feel very dubious that they can get all this done with this ticking clock of March 31st when Safety Lou, the current extension, expires. But that's where we are right now. So if you have any questions, email me directly at Bogren at ctaa.org, or call me at 202-247-1921. Thank you, and have a good day.